Ms. Como.
Oh, excuse.
Excuse, yep. Dr. Cooper-Stoll.
Here.
Mr. Jimenez.
Here.
Ms. Leahy.
Here.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Meyer. Mr. Meyer.
I have not received word from Mr. Meyer.
Okay. Mr. Korberg.
Here.
Mr. Spivey.
I have not heard from Mr. Spivey either.
Thank you. Mr. Turner.
I have not heard from Mr. Turner either.
Okay. Mr. Baines.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, so quorum, we have a quorum, yes? Okay. Quorum of the Board of Education is present, so the regularly scheduled meeting of October 5th, 2020 is called to order. We will now have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Tonight's agenda has previously been distributed to the board. A motion has been made by Mr. Korberg and seconded by Mr. Jimenez to approve the agenda as submitted unless there is a motion to amend. We will now have a roll call vote.
Mr. Jimenez.
Aye.
Ms. Leahy.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Korberg.
Aye.
Mr. Turner. Was with us.
Aye, pardon.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Cooper-Stoll.
Aye. We have no public speakers registered to speak for tonight. So now I just want to take a moment and introduce the board to our student school board rep from Central this year, Mr. Evan Baines. We do not have a student rep yet for Logan, but that should be coming shortly. I don't want to put you on the spot, Mr. Baines, but would you like to say hello?
Hello, I'm Evan. I'm a senior at Central High School. I'm obviously the student rep. I look forward to working with all of you this year. I think we're going to get a lot of good things done, so I'm excited for that.
Thank you, Mr. Baines. All right, the next thing we have up is consent agenda announcements. Any announcements from administration regarding the consent agenda?
I have one announcement regarding the human resources agenda, a fairly typical agenda, but does feature one retirement, a retirement of one of our excellent staff members in the Buildings and Grounds Department. Mark Biscow is retiring, started in the district on August 14 of 2006. He's been with us for 14 years in the Building and Grounds Department, served as an apprentice custodian, and for the last 8 years, he's been at Spence Elementary. And I'll read you just one line from an evaluation, a recent one. His supervisor wrote that he has a high sense of integrity and that is evident. And that's good praise, I think, something we like to see our employees demonstrating. So congratulations to Mark.
Thank you, Mr. White.
I would also add that the other consent agenda item in there is the Hamilton Edition construction bid. We opened up those bids, I believe, last week, and came in with a nice number of bids and a good spread in the numbers. And our budgeted estimate as we moved forward was about 5.6 million, and the budget, or in the bid that came in, was just under 4.8 million. So very competitive bids, excellent for the school district. It will allow us to take a little less out of our fund balance this year in order to make that project happen. So fantastic outcome for that wonderful addition to Hamilton.
Thank you, Superintendent Engel.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the items on the superintendent's consent agenda as presented.
Second.
So the consent agenda is a mechanism used by the board to deal with routine business that must come before the body. Are there any items the members want to remove from the consent agenda? All right, so we had a motion by Mr. Korberg and seconded by Mr. Jimenez that the items in the superintendent's consent agenda be approved as presented. And we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
I see Mr. Meyer just joined. Are you wanting to vote?
Yeah, I was here earlier too. I got kicked out. I got here right after probably the pledge.
Okay, very good.
Then I got kicked out again.
Okay, thank you. And what would your vote be, please?
Oh, yay. Sorry.
Okay. Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. All right, we'll now turn our attention to the board consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the items on the board consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, are there any items that members want to remove from the board consent agenda? All right, so with a motion made by Mr. Korberg and seconded by Mr. Turner, the items on the board consent agenda are approved as presented. We will have another roll call vote.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. So now we'll move down to matters reserved for board action. We'll begin with the 2020-2021 proposed budget approval.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2020-21 proposed budget as presented.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Korberg and seconded by Mr. Jimenez to approve the 2020-2021 proposed budget presented. We'll now open that up for discussion.
So I would just say that this is the second time the board has seen the proposed budget. Your attachments are your budget plan document that we went through last week and the published budget summary that was in the paper yesterday as required by statute. I would note that our budget for the general fund, although balanced, does not include any proposed increase to salary or wages. So just take that into consideration as we go forward. And any other questions?
Patty, if you wouldn't mind giving an update on enrollment numbers that we recently received. That's one of the big factors in our budget, and maybe not reflected entirely in this budget as well.
Sure. So last Friday, we handed in the pupil count as of third Friday. Our enrollment in the seats is down by 180 students. And our FTE, then our membership is also down. So that does affect the 3-year average for our revenue limit going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Spring. Are there any questions or comments from Ms. Spring?
I have a question for Pat. What were was it pretty spread out across K through 12, or was it certain age groups that you saw most of the numbers?
There were certain age groups, K4, K5, fourth grade, I think second grade, 11th grade. So they had substantial decreases and substantial decreases in the elementary. I think 163 were attributed to the elementary grades.
Did you get wind that they were homeschooling or different district?
We don't know right now. We do know our open enrollment out is larger than it has been in previous years. We would not know also if they went to private schools or homeschooled. So we are going to look into the homeschooled, see if we have any updated numbers for that. But I do not know right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
The deadline for homeschool registration, if you choose to use the portal, is October 15th. So we won't know until that time those final numbers. But you also, some families don't end up registering through that portal either. So they're just kind of unknown.
I'm wondering if we heard anything from the state, as in if any of their numbers are going to be changing. I haven't, but sometimes I don't catch the details for K-12.
I think from what I have heard, it's highly unlikely the state legislature will address any budgetary concerns this year, kind of positively or negatively. I think with the recent tax rolls coming in pretty healthy for the last fiscal year, I believe from what I'm hearing, the legislature is content to let this budget kind of ride for this year as it stands. So no adjustment for COVID concerns, either in reducing school budgets or in increasing them.
Hey,
Okay.
Patty, I'm sorry, Patty, one more quick question. Any particular schools hit harder, elementary schools, or was it pretty spread evenly?
No, that there was some that were hit harder than others. I don't have my information right in front of me right now, but yes, it was noticeable. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no further questions or comments, then we're going to move to a roll call vote.
Mr. Jimenez,
Aye.
Ms. Leahy,
Aye.
Mr. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Meyer,
Aye.
Mr. Korberg,
Aye.
Mr. Spivey,
Aye.
Mr. Turner, Mr. Turner. I think we lost Mr. Turner. Okay. Dr. Cooper Stoll.
Aye. All right, the next item up is the operational expectation OE8, communicating and support for the board. It's coming back to the board table.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve the operational expectation OE8, communicating and support for the board monitoring report template as presented.
Second.
So a motion has been made by Mr. Korberg and seconded Mr. Turner to approve the operational expectation OE8, communicating and support for the board monitoring report template as presented. Dr. Engel, did you want to speak to this monitoring template?
Absolutely. The primary concern that we wanted to address was 8.4 indicator 2. The superintendent considers a variety of viewpoints in communication to the Board of Education. For the evidence listed, we did not have a variety of viewpoints listed as possible evidence. And so we added in some examples of more diverse groups. It's not an exhaustive list, but it prompts us to be thinking about the right things as we approach that indicator. So the evidence now reads notes from meetings with parent and advocacy groups. For example, district-wide parent committee, Southside Moms, Black, and MOOB Cultural Community Agency. Those are just some examples, and obviously we would be reaching out to others as well. So each year it might look a little different.
Questions or comments for Dr. Engel regarding the changes to OE8 template?
Just a comment. Hmong Culture Agency, but the HMOOB is spelled in a yeah, so it's Hmong Agency. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee.
Yep, no problem.
I appreciate that.
I believe there's also a typo for measure indicator 1.
I will have that corrected.
Okay. All right. So, all right. We'll move to a vote with the amendments that will make the correction that Mr. Lee identified and the typo. Ms. Steigerwald, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey? Mr. Spivey?
Aye. I thought you heard me, sorry.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper-Stoll?
Aye. All right, we're going to move down to the information portion of the meeting. We'll begin with the summer school report.
Good evening. Do I just jump into this, Dr. Cooper-Stoll, or does somebody have something there? I'll just jump into it here. Okay,
Go
good.
right ahead.
Okay, so thank you for taking the time to review the summer school report. I know you have copies of the report in front of you. You also have, I think, an overview. I tried to provide you with an overview sheet so you could see the offerings at the high school. Page 2 was middle school and elementary, along with music lessons. And then my apologies for the late arrival, but today you should have all received a stat sheet that we always wait. We always kind of get up against the third Friday count, which is more important because that's bringing a lot of money into the district. But Tanya came in this weekend and helped me run some of the demographic report there at the bottom, okay? So that you can get a kind of a comparison here. If you don't mind, I have just about 5-6 minutes or so, and then I can open it up to questions if that's okay.
Sure.
We started our planning process for summer school in October of last year, like we do every year, and we had our summer school brochure all prepared. It was distributed to families. All the students were signed up for classes. We had our courses built. All of them were staffed and ready to go. We had more than 200 enrichment classes offered. All of our elementary and middle school reading and math, the high school regional credit classes, advanced math, etc. And we had plans to implement several changes at the beginning of this year, all of which we have accomplished, by the way. Programming, including our staff taking attendance electronically, which you would think would be an easy thing to do, but it's not for summer for some reason. We provided updated guidelines for our teachers that teach elementary reading and math in a face-to-face environment. We just thought we needed to tighten that up a bit, so we worked on that this year. And then also setting up electronic registration for music lessons, which we were able to do. So, and here's the understatement of the presentation tonight. Because of the ongoing pandemic, we built several different versions of summer school this summer. So sometime today, it became clear that we were not going to be able to offer face-to-face instruction for our first summer school programs that start in June. Primarily our high school programming. At the time, Superintendent Nelson's first priority was he challenged us to say, all right, let's make sure that these high school kids get all the courses they need in a remote environment if we can, so they can stay on track to graduate with cohorts and so on. So that's what our top priority was. And the high school principals worked with Mrs. Everson and with their teachers. And I can tell you that all the classes that we normally offer in a regular year, we offered in a virtual environment this year. So we were very pleased that our teachers were able to step up and figure out a way to offer those in a virtual environment. You can see the stat sheet I provided. Those numbers are down this year, and we can talk about that in a minute. At the time the decision was made to offer remote instruction for our first summer school offerings, high school program, we were still hanging on to hope, right, that we could offer some kind of face-to-face programming. And so really almost twice a week we were meeting at the time as a leadership team to try to decide what could we offer, how would we know what we could offer, and so on and so forth. And each one of those is a step along the way, and this is a very shortened version, right? But ultimately, all of our courses were offered in a remote environment except for one class that I'll talk about in a minute. And in order to do that, we had to first of all figure out, could we even offer it? Would we be able to staff or teachers interested in teaching in a remote environment? And so we surveyed all of our teachers of enrichment classes to see would they be interested in teaching a remote class. One of the things that makes our summer school program so inviting and I think so popular is its hands-on nature, right? The way that we're summer on the farm and all the art and all the different kinds of programs that we offer. And so we had to survey our teachers to see who was interested in doing any kind of enrichment classes, which quite honestly was very little interest in doing enrichment in a remote environment on the part of our teaching staff. And then who would be willing to do the reading and math programming and all the different offerings that we do. We also ended up surveying our parents a couple of different times to see what their appetite was for, remote instruction. So remember now, we just came off of a spring where we had to go virtual, and as a part of that, that was a steep learning curve for our parents, for our students, for our staff, and quite honestly, I think it put a lot of burden on our families. And then when summer came, we were feeling like I think a lot of them were feeling, if we can't do this in a face-to-face environment, my kids just need a break from the remote, right, from the virtual stuff. So, but anyway, we looked at all those surveys to determine our final offerings that we did offer this summer, and you see those on your sheet. So, this summer came with a lot of challenges. There were some things we didn't have to spend our time on. For instance, busing, right? We didn't spend any time on busing because it was all in a remote environment. We hired 200 less staff this year. At the bottom of your stat sheet, you can see last year we hired 286 staff. This year, 87. 86 of those were teachers. One was an interpreter. And so we didn't have to spend all the time on those things, but we did spend our time on a number of other very challenging aspects. So some of those just include just a quick rundown of, we did set up a whole new registration system allowing families to re-register for remote learning. Tanya Hoskins was invaluable in that process. We had to figure out, as I mentioned, if we could staff it. Mark White helped us along with the building principals, Shelley Sherrill, Stacy Everson, the leadership team. We had to decide on what learning management system, electronic learning management system we would be using for these remote programs. And that was not as difficult as we thought, but we needed to make sure that we could support that. We knew that we were going to be distributing devices to students, and that this was a new format for our teachers. So one of the first things we did was hire a tech support person that also understood teaching and learning, Josh Wolcott. Many of you know Josh from Lincoln Middle School, who just did a tremendous job supporting our teachers this summer. We had to rebuild our reading and math programs because we changed them all in a face-to-face environment. And now we went to remote, so we had to really get some people together. Rob, Tyvo, Melissa Ender really worked hard at working with our instructional coaches to develop a program that was meaningful for our kids. A lot smaller groups, which was really very effective in this remote environment, we felt. And then also at the middle school level, and I just really want to thank Ruth Bardseth. Ruth Bardseth, again, a teacher at Lincoln, worked closely with all the middle school teachers from all three schools to really develop, I think, a pretty unique middle school program that we offered this summer for reading and math, all remote. And one, I think they're using a lot of what they worked on this summer, this fall. So it was, I think, time well spent, but a special thank you to them. And then music lessons was a whole nother challenge, right? So how do you deliver strings, band, and voice lessons in a remote environment? So Tony DiPaolo, I cannot tell you the hours he put in with 25 plus music teachers, calming them down, telling them it'll be okay, and this is how we're going to try to do it, right? So, and then just the last thing I think you got to remember, for every one of these remote systems, we had to figure out a way to get a device in the hands of our students. So this was one of those years where all those personal devices came back to the schools at the end of the year. The only exception to that was our high school students that were going to take an original credit recovery class starting on June 8th or 9th. They got to keep their devices. Everybody else had a new device. And then after those classes were done, if they took a music class, then they turned in their old device and we gave them a new device. And so for every one of those classes, they had to have time. Our IT, Michael St. Pierre, and really Kat Ellingson and that whole group, they had to order the devices in enough time to get them prepped, and then we had to get them distributed prior to the start of those classes. So that was really a challenge, I think, for everyone. But it's amazing, 1,200 plus devices, and I think it was closer to 1,500 that they actually prepped for the summer. So, really, in a nutshell, that's kind of the overview of some of the challenges. You have those attachments that I have there. I'm not going to go through everything on the overview sheet, but I might just mention a couple of things here. The Algebra 1 completion course under original credit, that was the only class that we offered face-to-face at high school. The reason that was the only one was that was a time when Ami Zabrowski was starting with ESY, Extended School Year Programming for special ed students. We had systems set up at certain schools to screen students. We had health staff there on site. And so this was a course that the teachers really felt like this was not best delivered in a remote environment. We're going to try to do this. I think we started with 12 students. We, I believe, ended up with 10 there. They only met 9 days, and then we went from an orange level to a red level. And the course was canceled at that point. And everybody knew that going in, that we were going to attempt to do this face-to-face if we could. But it didn't work during the weeks that we presented this. So, and then finally, on the second page of that, you'll just note that there are some intersession days that we're able to count towards the DPI minutes for the state. And so this year, we had Hamilton and Northside both being year-round schools. This last year had a total of 22 intersession days where we had kids in session, and we can count those days summer school minutes. And so they have different offerings for students. Like, for instance, at Northside, they offered both a half-day program and a full-day program. Hamilton offered a half-day program based on what their families indicated to them they wanted. So you can see some of those numbers there too. So really, given the challenges that we had, we were able to offer remote classes at all 3 levels this year. We're very happy about that. We were able to prep and distribute more than 1,200 personal devices for students. We did get our electronic registration up and running, electronic attendance for almost all courses now. There were some hiccups with the attendance that we're still working out, but anytime apparently Skyward doesn't like to talk about summer very well. So Patty, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the story Sonia's given me, and I can trust her, I think. So, but at any rate, and then finally, I just want to say, I think one of the other highlights was working with the team of people that we have in this district. I mean, when you tell people, we don't even know where we're going with this thing yet, but we're going to try this, and then we're going to try this, then we're going to try this. So, I mean, our leadership team, both Shelley Sherrill, Stacy Everson, all our supervisors, my 2 summer school administrative assistants, Ruth Lees, Jessica Anand, both did a tremendous job here, just being flexible, understanding that change comes. And, Dr. Engel shared an article with all the administrative team a few weeks back that talks about how do you lead in a pandemic. And one of the pieces we looked at, there's some things you just have to let go of, right? And so there was a lot of letting go. We had to let go of that whole brochure that we spent all this time on and say, we're going to start new, right? And then and just accept the challenge and say, let's get busy about getting after it. And I think we did that. So I'm proud of that. And our goals for next year, we're really hoping to be able to continue a robust summer school program next year. We're going to start building it actually later this month when I meet with Joe Ledvina, Patty, Mark, and some of the other team members to say, let's start looking at some dates. I think we have to be prepared in the future to offer both face-to-face and remote classes or virtual classes. And so that's something we're going to continue to work on. We started some things this year with reading and math, both at elementary and middle school. We think we can improve on that as well. And now that we have a common learning management system, Canvas, throughout the district, and I got to tell you, our teachers right now are rocking it with it. They're doing a tremendous job. It's a steep learning curve, but they're really doing a great job with it, and really like what that's offering with the Zoom connection there. So at any rate, that's kind of where we're going. We have some other efficiencies that we need to improve on, but and then that's where I'll end. And if you guys have questions, I'm sure you do, I'm happy to answer whatever I can for
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Are there questions or comments for Mr. Hunter?
I do have one additional thing to add. First off, Mr. Hunter was graciously spreading the kudos around. He also deserves a lot of kudos himself for managing in exceptional times and never seeing any obstacles too great to trying to provide something wonderful for our students.
Thank you.
It may not be directly obvious why we're presenting a summer school report now, other than that it is after summer. However, it also ties in directly to our budget, and it's a core piece of our enrollment number as we figure out our revenue limit. And so all of the minutes that are added up from summer school get compiled to add FTEs to our revenue limit worksheet. And so the drastic decrease in attendance this year does have an impact on our budget this year as well. Now, that being said, we saw a decrease in our expenses as well. You saw that we had almost 200 teachers fewer. So our expenses are fewer, but our added revenue is also lower. And this is once again on a 3-year average. So the impact is mitigated in any 1 year, but we'll be seeing that impact for a while. Ms. Sprang, do you have the difference between last year and this year in the FTEs for summer school, just so people can kind of get an idea for what that might be?
There we go. Okay. So last year, the FTE for summer school was 217. This year it was 69. 40% of that is added to the revenue limit calculation. So last year, 87 FTE added to the revenue limit. This year, 28. So it is impactful.
So it was about 70% decline in FTEs, but is also or about 30% of what we had last year is what we have this year, but it's the same thing for our teaching staff. So it's commensurate, but it will have an impact, and we'll notice it as kind of an anomaly, assuming everything goes back to normal for next year. So given that this is part of our budget season, this is a perfect time to present this report, both in terms of reflecting on summer as well as adding into our budget.
Are there any final questions or comments for Mr. Hunter? Thank you, Mr. Hunter. All right, we're now going to move to the community integration report.
Okay, so this just lets you know what our facility usage was during the year. And of course, as you can see by the numbers, it was impacted again by COVID that closed our schools and our buildings. So that impacted the usage, of course. So comparatively to last year, the revenue is a little bit more than a half of what we received last year. And the hours of usage is a little bit, is about 3/4 of what the usage was last year. Any other questions?
Questions for Ms. Sprang? Thank you, Ms. Sprang. All right, the last item on the for the information portion of the agenda is the governance officer role, which I promised to bring back for discussion this fall. We were waiting to have that professional development with Randy and Linda in August to get some additional feedback from them as to their thoughts about the particular role. So you were all there and part of that discussion. My takeaway from that, and if any of you disagree with me or heard it a different way, was that there were some real challenges in having that role on the board, and it wasn't one they really recommended. However, I did agree with them in that we need to figure out ways to integrate board members into board meetings as much as we possibly can. And so this item tonight on the agenda is to, one, revisit with all of you to get your feedback, following Randy and Linda's feedback on the governance officer role. What they offer, or what they suggested as a potential alternative to that, was rotating, having board members each take an opportunity to lead the debriefing in the meetings, and potentially take part in agenda planning. So I just want to let folks know, as far as agenda planning, if anyone is ever interested in sitting in on that meeting, you are welcome to do so. You just need to reach out to me. Well, we can make that happen. We don't have a set time and date we meet each week, because, as you might imagine, it's a matter of coordinating Dr. Engel's schedule, my schedule, and Laura's schedule. But I just want to say, like, that's open if someone is interested. I do want to reiterate something I've shared on the board before as well, which is that we need mentorship opportunities on this board. And it should never be a matter of someone, we want there to be as many leadership opportunities as possible. And I would never want someone to have to move into a leadership position and feel like there wasn't a transition for that. That's something that I have always felt very strongly about. And so I just want to reiterate that at this point, and that's something we can continue to talk about as a board moving forward. If we want to rotate, I am completely in favor of rotating the debriefing and having that shared. The board president, whoever that is, does not need to be involved in that part of it and running the meeting as well. And I think this provides an opportunity to hear from other board members. One suggestion that I have is to, assign a board member per meeting with an alternate, because things come up and sometimes board members aren't able to be present for a meeting, and that way we always have a backup. There are some questions that Laura has started providing to us in the agenda notes, questions that have come out of wisdom sharing and other feedback that Randy and Linda have provided, some guiding questions that can be used during the debriefing. But I also have no issue with whomever may be leading the debriefing to utilize questions of their own. To be clear, the debriefing period is supposed to be the period in the meeting where the board reflects on its actions in the meeting. Did we adhere to coherent governance? Did we keep the focus on our mission and our priorities as a board? Are there things that we can improve on moving forward? That is the purpose of the debriefing, if there is still a question about it. Now I will open this up to other board members to hear what is your feedback, because it would be great if we could decide what we want to do in terms of this discussion moving forward.
I'm actually all for, this is Kante, I'm actually all for rotating that responsibility of debriefing the meetings. I just feel like if we're giving everybody like the same list of questions to debrief, it's going to be the same thing all the time. So I think just a little bit of a creative process for each board member to debrief in a way they want to. I just think list or describe what you thought was successful about this meeting. Did we adhere to list your actions, recommendations for improvements for future? I really feel like if we give everybody that list of questions, it'd be a very mundane, process, a mundane. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm for it. I just feel like the creative process behind it should be up to, of course, answer certain questions, but should be up to the board member at large, who has that week, if you will.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Other thoughts from board members, including those who may still want to advocate for, a governance officer role? Certainly a board member is always able to make a motion, and as long as there's a second, that's something we can move forward with as well.
I too would have to agree. Oh, sorry, Juan, were you about to? Okay. I too would have to agree. I think that alternating it amongst the board members, I think would be a really good idea. I also have to say ditto in terms of that mentorship piece that you also talked about. I think that is extremely important. And granted, recognizing that COVID, as you can see, has done a number on our district. It also has done a number with that piece as well. But I think if we can figure out a way to definitely figure out how to implement mentorship into our board would be awesome. So.
Thank you, Mr. Spivey. Mr.
Yeah,
Minnis.
Mr. Spivey hit exactly what I was going to comment on, which is the mentorship piece. I think we really need to consider how do we do that in a better way. I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. You know, and to that point, Mr. Jimenez, last year, I tried to do this a little bit differently, if you recall, which is historically, or at least in the more recent, past, when we have our board reorganization meeting, there hasn't been a lot of discussion beforehand. And I find that troubling. I'd much rather have conversations with folks beforehand and know who's interested in serving. And the sooner the better, because that also, I think, can help shape what kinds of just ensuring that mentorship happens. So I am reading from this conversation. That's not the only type of mentorship that we're talking about, but that's one where I think I definitely have my eye towards making sure, we're well prepared when those transitions come. So I'm glad to hear the feedback from board members about the importance of that piece.
Yeah, and thank you very much for the transparency in the past year. I think that's been a very critical piece and has been very helpful, I think, in making us a more cohesive board.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. Other comments or thoughts on the rotation of the debriefing among board members?
One thing I'm thinking about for the debriefing is I think we might want to set up a few guidelines. I mean, I don't think we want to ask the same question every time, but then we also don't want to go off on a tangent and have somebody kind of take us down a path just because it's somewhere they want to go. I mean, which I mean, I think we can do that constructively, and I think what our goal is to become, like you said, become a better board. And I think it won't hurt at all to have our mission put in front of us, one every week. So we keep that in mind. I mean, we all know we're here for the students, but there's more to it than just that. So I would be supportive of something like that. Again, probably on a rotational basis. But again, not that it has to be the same thing every weekend. And I think that would be, again, a way we could develop one another and probably see some mentorship in it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Korber. I also look forward to putting in place this year a process for a review process for the board as well that Randy and Linda talked about. And so this is something that could easily help with that process as well, having a more regular check-in with the board and then an annual one that can be informed by that. So unless I'm, I'm not hearing any objection to doing that, what I will work on then is putting together that rotating schedule with alternates so that there is ample warning of who might be leading that work. And your point is well taken, Mr. Korber, which is how do we leave space for people to feel like that they're putting their own mark on it, but that we don't get away from, again, the purpose of what the debriefing is. Okay.
Can I ask a question about this? So before you put that schedule, I mean, I would like to see something that kind of outlines expectations of that board debriefer. Though I would appreciate seeing something like that. What are the expectations of the board debriefer?
Sure. Yeah, that's not a problem. Thank you, Mr. Meyer.
And I'll add one other thing to the mentor. This all sounds good. I would actually like to. It's kind of tied to mentorship, but also this position, board orientation. I think it's historically. I mean, since I've been on the board, and I'm the oldie at this point in time, and soon to be off in the wind. But I don't know how your guys' board orientations were, but that's something I think. Starting with that allows for that mentorship to start happening because they're more knowledgeable. There's more common ground to talk about, more issues and stuff. So I would consider you guys to kind of take a look at that next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mr. Meyer.
So
All right,
do we,
Mayor- Oh,
question
sorry.
for you, in terms of procedure, I guess, do we need to make a motion for this, or do we also need to make a motion to end the governance position at all?
No, there's nothing to be done at this point. Thank you for asking, though. Yeah, and the governance officer position, I think, was not brought forward as an action item. We've just had it as a discussion item. Thank you, Mr. Spivey. All right, so now we're going to move down to announcements, and we'll begin with Mr. Korber.
Soon as I can find my unmute, and then I got to find my notes. I just wanted to discuss a little bit about the Crosse Public Education Foundation had its in-house campaign for staff, and we had 24 new payroll contributors, collectively giving $164 per payroll, and received 49 one-time gifts totaling $1,852. As expected, this is down significantly from a typical year, whatever that's going to be now in the future. But we did pick up 44 new payroll contributors and had 112 people give one-time gifts. So things aren't as going down the road as fast as we had hoped, but things are doing well. And remember that my challenge to you is still out there to either for all board members to either do a little payroll deduction or a one-time gift. That would be greatly appreciated, and I will match up to at least $1,000 for a whole board gift if people are willing to move that way. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Korberg. I do not. The only announcement I had was about the open forum, but Dr. Engel, I'm guessing you're going to include that in your announcements. Then with that, we'll just move right to you.
I have two things. The first is a open forum on the school resource officer program that will happen next week on Monday. And it will be at 6 p.m. and we will be online again, given the conditions in our community regarding COVID. If somebody would like to speak at the open forum, they can call the district office and we will have them registered and ready to go for that meeting on Monday. The second announcement I have is it is Wisconsin School Board Week, and I want to take this opportunity to thank our school board for the incredibly vital function and role you play in local government. Your commitment to our students and our community is incredible. And it takes strong schools to build a strong community. And without you, we would not have those strong schools. I am impressed by the tough decisions and tough conversations that school board members take on every week. And the time you spend studying educational issues and regulations in order to understand your roles better. It's not easy coming in and becoming an expert as quickly as you need to in order to make good decisions. Your time and your effort provide the accountability that our citizens expect. And I just want to say thank you to our school board. Thank you for running. Thank you for supporting our community. It's an incredibly big job, and I thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Engel. Mr. Baines, do you have some announcements for us?
Sorry, I didn't really prepare anything.
That's okay. I didn't actually see this on the agenda either, but Laura helped me out. This is where we're going to be including the student reps at this point. So how about we'll just say, Evan, that this is just, you know, a trial run there. How about that?
All right.
All right, sounds good. All right, so any other announcements?
The only thing I have is that as being the WASB rep, tomorrow is the Region 6's evening for the election and for the workshop at 7 p.m. No registration required. You just have to log in. And I think Laura has given us that, or maybe she will send those out again so those of us don't have to go searching for those. Or, but anyway.
It's coming from WASB.
Oh, it is coming from WASB.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I believe there's
come from WASB.
What's that?
I said it probably has come at this point because it is tomorrow. So
I bet so. I'd have to double check in my email, but I think they're just sending a blanket email to join for all of the school
it's
board members.
basically a Zoom call. Like I said, no registration or whatever. So, but at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, if you're wanting to Zoom in, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Korber. Any other announcements before we move to agenda planning?
Yeah. Can I? Sorry, Keontae. So I was actually just going to ask Evan. Is that his name? Evan, our new school board member. How's school going for you?
It's going all right so far. You know, I think it's hard to keep up with all the work, in my personal opinion, because everything's online. And so, you know, some teachers are bad at organizing on the website. And so sometimes it's hard to find assignments. And then it's just hard to keep track of all the homework. But I would consider myself lucky that I'm a senior this year and I have built these pretty good relationships with most of my teachers. So if I have any questions or trouble with homework and stuff, it's really easy to reach out. Obviously, you know, part of school for me is that social aspect, and that's much harder to maintain online. And I think our teachers and our staff are doing their best to try and facilitate, you know, social learning as well. Because we do group assignments and stuff, which is nice. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. I have a son who's going to be a freshman at Central this year. I guess is a freshman at Central. But I just wanted to give a shout out to his teachers and my daughters. Actually, I probably have maybe come off as a little critical of some things within the district with this situation. But my son has transitioned quite well. I'm shocked by it, to be honest with you. And I think it has a lot to do with the prep work that went in and everything. And my daughter is doing well. So I want to make sure those teachers know that they're doing an excellent job. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer and Mr. Baines. Mr. Turner, did you have an announcement?
Yeah. In lieu of giving high praises to our teachers, I also want to shout out the Lunch Lady Army. 50,000 meals served just in the month of September. So I just want to give them a shout out. They are working tirelessly. I see the meals come into the YMCA and we're giving them to our kids, and they're just doing an amazing job. $50,000 meals just in 1 month is incredible. So just want to get a shout out to them.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. All right, if there are no other announcements, we're going to move to agenda planning.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the October 19th, 2020 public budget hearing and Board of Education agendas with any additions or corrections.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Korberg and seconded by Mr. Jimenez to approve the October 19th, 2020 public budget hearing and Board of Education agendas with any additions or corrections. And we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Ms. Leahy?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Meyer?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Mr. Spivey?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Aye. All right, board debriefing. So thinking about our agenda this evening and the items that we moved through, is there any feedback that any board members would like to share that we can use to grow from in our upcoming meetings?
Yeah, I guess I would say I actually liked that we had our student reps speak beforehand, and now we're moving it to the end of the meeting. Why is that, or who made that decision, if you will? Yes. So as we transition to the new agenda format for coherent governance, announcements we just decided for consistency to keep announcements together instead of having them spread out in that way. So it's just an organizational matter. This way it doesn't also, I think, put the board reps on the spot right at the beginning of the meeting as well. But yeah, thank you for that question. Any other feedback regarding the meeting?
I'd like to welcome Evan too. It's great to have a student viewpoint, and I look forward to hearing from you during our meetings. I also want to say I think Mr. Levina has gone off, but I know he and his crew has done a great job with the Hamilton project, and I think that's a shining example of what we can do in our community when we work together. And we're going to have a hot dang building there that's going to be even better than what it is right now. And it's basically contributed to the partners who've come together. And I think, you know, this is going to do a lot. I remember the meetings that we had in that community and that area there, and with keeping students in focus as to what we want in that building. So they no longer have to fight with their gym and their lunchroom in one room and just be a very bad learning environment. And so I'm excited for that. The bids came in almost $1 million, just about $1 million, less than we expected, which of course will allow us to do other things with different monies. And then I want to mention that I want to appreciate everybody's on the school board's attention to detail in these trying times. It's very hard to get to know people, especially the new board members. And so I want to say to them, please hang in there and be patient with us as we move along here. And I think we're doing a good job. It's not ideal, of course, but nothing is these days. But I think we'll get there, and we'll get better as we go on, and hopefully we'll be able to meet as in one room sooner versus later.
Thank you, Mr. Korberg. All right. If there are no final comments from board members, then I am going to adjourn the meeting. The meeting is so adjourned. I look forward to seeing you either in the meeting for the open forum, or if you want to watch privately and tune into the district channel as well. Thanks all.
Adios.